it was kind of a surreal thing because I remember at the age, I think it was around 28 or so, that started happening. And so I usually now when I have a closed door, I look at that as a gift and I look at it as something that's helping me learn where maybe my energy should be at that time. And sometimes it's like, oh, in terms of starting on Amazon, I mean, I think that there's a lot of key things to figure out. There's one thing that's important to do is to, which I loved, but it definitely reaffirmed for me that the office 9 to 5 working for someone else like world wasn't for me. I've even had like very interesting tests where I've said no to things where I'm proud of it. And so for me, it's very easy to take the first step because I'm like, well, if it doesn't work, we'll figure something else out, right? I've had moments that still to this day are cringe moments where I was like, oh my gosh, how did that, I don't know. I think that failure is beautiful and I encourage it as much as possible because it means you're taking risks and you're trying things that are outside of your comfort zone. And usually, are there places that I could have done things better? Maybe, I'm sure.
So what is the best part of it? What's the fun part of running a business?
That's where magic happens.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Infinite Icons. We have an inspiring guest today. She is a mom, she's an entrepreneur, and she's a homely person. And most importantly, she's a self-driven woman. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Denise Troy. Hello, Denise. Welcome.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be sharing my journey with you. So it's going to be fun.
Absolutely. Oh, it's going to be exciting. So I know you as the founder of Stillness.
Yes.
Handmade products. So for those who do not know much about you, could you give us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am originally from Kansas City. And I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit, just even from a very young age. I think I started my first little business when I was about 5 or 6, where I was selling drawings of my artwork to peers. I was always kind of hustling. So there was just this ingrained, inherent nature to just want to create things and then turn it into selling stuff. So I've always had a passion for that. That then turned into, once I was graduating high school, I got into NYU and it was just very expensive and way exceeded what my family was able to kind of do at the time. And so that then segued into my, I think first we would call legit business, because I don't know if you call the first, the kindergarten one legit. So I started a dance program that summer to really just try to offset the expenses of tuition. And luckily I was able to create something that was successful enough to do so. And that led me to go to school in New York. And after graduating from NYU, I started working in advertising and graphic design in New York City, which I loved, but it definitely reaffirmed for me that the office 9 to 5 working for someone else world wasn't for me. And so I then left that position and actually got a position dancing in a film. I've always just had a very artistic natured spirit. I love everything that is artistry, whether it be painting, singing, dancing, anything of that nature. It's all a form of self-expression to me. And graphic design was as well. So they're all just kind of forms of me being able to share my visual journey with an audience. So I did that and I worked in Baltimore at that time for that film. And then that led me to move to Los Angeles, where I started really working as a choreographer and really developed and honed those skills. I worked on music videos, film and TV, all of the things that kind of I'd always dreamt of as a little girl. And I remember kind of as a child, my big goal in life was to have a music video on MTV. That's just what I dreamed of, right? And it was kind of a surreal thing because I remember at the age, I think it was around 28 or so, that started happening. And my brain was just oh my gosh, wait, I just got my first, my big dream has already happened. Like I've already checked the box. And so it really opened up a space to allow me to think even bigger or to pivot a little bit, because I had already kind of fulfilled and satiated something that I had always thought was going to be like this lifelong journey. And so I think that my heart just started to pivot a little bit from like the ego standpoint and wanting to do something more impactful. And so that transition was also happening during my decision to transition into like motherhood as well. And so it felt very like timely and the right thing for me. I was ready to just give back, not only as a mother, but then as also a business owner. And so I started businesses that were social entrepreneurships that were centered around impact and centered around doing good at the same time as being a profitable business. And so, yeah, that's just kind of led me to this point now. I founded Stillness last winter, and it's just been this beautiful moment of synchronicities and timing and just everything kind of coalescing into a beautiful output that has allowed it to grow rapidly and to be able to be successful. And so that's kind of where I'm at now, and I'm really enjoying it because it's kind of merging my love for not even protecting, but like I'd say my love for supporting and providing for women, because it's like definitely a key theme for me in my life is I want to always empower women and make them feel supported in all stages of life. And then also to be able to create beautiful things. So it's all kind of come together into this beautiful moment. And I'm really enjoying the journey because that's really important in any process of starting a business. So
Beautiful. That was fascinating. Wow, that's amazing. So, you supported yourself for your college education.
yeah. And my
That's
parents definitely did help out in the ways that they could, but there was a cap to what they could handle. And I knew that if I wanted to make that happen, and my mom was definitely like a huge champion of it. She always kind of pushed for me to do things that were scary and to take risks and not be afraid of, you know, the fallout or whatever it might be that, you know, you can sometimes get in your head about. And so I think that definitely coupled with like, you know, their willingness to support me however that looked made me feel like it was still attainable, even though it honestly, when I look back at it, I'm like, that was insane that I generated so much income in such a short amount of time at a young age to be able to afford NYU. So it definitely now seems crazier. And I don't know if I would have had, I would have like the kahunas at this point to do it, but like, I'm so proud of myself that I had that at the time at age 18. So yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. I have heard of Stillness, but
Yeah.
what's the story behind Stillness? It's spelled N-U-S.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
what
loved it because it felt like it was kind of a play on words to me. And I loved it for multiple reasons because obviously the word stillness evokes this like idea of kind of peacefulness, going within, finding your center, all of those things. But then I saw like also it, because it's spelled still and then NUS, I thought of it as still in us as kind of more of a communal feeling of like all of us coming together and finding how to be still as like a community. And so I thought like it kind of, and whether or not a customer ever really even gets that, it didn't really matter to me. It's just something that felt like it evoked all of the things I wanted it to feel. I love that the word us is in the word and that it makes you feel that kind of communal energy of all, like you're going within, but to make yourself better for the out, right? And that's definitely what I think of all the time is like, I pour into myself so that I can be the best that I can be for everyone that I love and for everything that I love. And so it's this kind of reciprocal moment of like pouring in to give out, and that like it's this flow of energy that allows that to happen. I also feel like the logo that I designed, echoes that is that it's like, I'll show on the thing, but here's like the logo, and actually the triangle represents the person, and then the dot is actually your energy, your core energy, and then the circles ripple the energy out. And so it's again the idea of centering and like creating that kind of focal source of energy so that then it can be beautiful and kind of ripple out into the world. And yeah, so that's just kind of like where all of it stems from, is this notion that we all have the potential to cultivate this source energy, and that then we can then take that and turn it into light energy, emitting outwards, so that we, hopefully can, amidst all of the hard moments and all of the negative things that happen, still kind of hold that space for others when it's hard for them to do so.
How lovely. I mean, it's a very beautiful thought and your actions.
Thanks.
Since you started very early,
Yeah.
are you from an entrepreneurial family? Were all
Yeah,
of
I
your family
actually
members?
I am. Both of my parents possessed an entrepreneurial spirit. And it's so funny because I always think about how I'm kind of like the two of them combined. My dad owned a printing company, and my mom was like a performer, dancer, singer. And so I kind of just became like this mini imprint of like my dad's passion for paper and like, graphic design. All of that kind of came from that energy. His mom was actually an artist, like a fine artist, so that also I think is in my system. And then my mom's mom was a performer as well. She used to like sing for the Navy boys, like all over. So it's just like was in my body and blood to, I think, have not only entrepreneurship in me, but also this kind of creative energy that is just kind of bursting at the seams. Sometimes I feel like I have so many thoughts and ideas, I'm sure people can relate, but it's like you have so much to give that you're almost like running on some sort of strange adrenaline that you don't really know where it's coming from. So
Yeah, you definitely inherited.
yeah, I would say so.
Definitely. Yeah. So what has been your biggest learning in your since you started your businesses?
I mean, I think, and this is probably like something that a lot of entrepreneurs would echo, is probably being okay with the journey and the timing of things. I often find that when I'm talking to other people who are starting businesses, everybody sometimes is in a rush to have everything happen quickly and like wanting everything to just like unfold. And they're just like, why isn't it happening? And there's this kind of like, you know, impatience. And especially because like we live in a day and age where it's like instant gratification on every front for everything at all times. And so it is very hard to go from that lifestyle and then flip into a journey where it takes timing and it takes energy, and you have to kind of allow for it to open at the tempo that it wants to. And I think that like that's something in my 40s, finally, I'm starting to kind of realize that timing is always important to like tune into, and to be okay. Like, if you have a hurdle or something that's not opening for you, is instead of pushing against it and like fighting that, allowing that to be a redirection, or allowing it to kind of give you clues to maybe slowing down or whatever you're actually supposed to get from that information. And so I usually now, when I have a closed door, I look at that as a gift, and I look at it as something that's helping me learn where maybe my energy should be at that time. And sometimes it's like, oh, Denise, like the business doesn't need your focus right now. You need to pour into your family. Sometimes it's like, Denise, this isn't the right like direction for the business, and it's somewhere within your business system, right? And so it's just some of that kind of stuff, is learning to be okay with timing, learning to allow things to open at the tempo that's going to serve you, and not like trying to force the square peg into the circle. Like that's just never going to work well, and it ends up usually leading you off path with what actually is going to help you at the end of the day.
Yeah, but how do you actually prioritize when everything seems to be so urgent and important?
I mean, I've got my ways, right? I think we all kind of figure out things that work for us. For me, I have like a planner that I put into like my weekly, like I start my Monday and I literally prioritize three things that I want to get done for the entire week that are like the highest line priorities for me. And then I will then break that down into 3 to 5 things each day that I'd like to accomplish, but they aren't the high priority that those three things are. And if I hit all three of my high priority things, like that's a successful week for me. Did I get all 25 things done that I wanted to get done that week? Maybe not. But if I've got the three that are going to help momentum wise and that are going to help growth wise the business as much as possible, like that's all that really actually matters. And all the other things are going to get done as they need to get done. And some of them might become priorities the following week, right? And might become one of the three, or they might not. And they might still kind of just get shimmied down the line, right? So I don't know. I think everyone kind of has to figure out what their process is. I definitely found that at the beginning of my journey as an entrepreneur, sometimes I would create more work than was necessary. And I would like be spinning my wheels doing a lot of things, but I don't know if tangible deliverables were necessarily happening. I was just like tweaking and tinkering with the website and making more adjustments and all of these things. And now I kind of just like make a decision and I keep moving, and I make a decision and I keep moving, and I don't sit in spaces of unwavering or like, going back and forth about concepts or ideas. I just kind of decide and I move on. And it helps, I think, a lot in terms of not only momentum, but also like growth in general. I think you can easily get stuck and then not move for long periods of time if you don't continually just make decisions.
Absolutely, I totally resonate that. Yeah, so
Like,
I think you work in chunks,
yeah,
small portions, and keep
yeah,
adding on.
yeah.
So, according to you, what do you find more challenging, strategizing or putting it into action?
Probably strategizing for me. I'm definitely a doer by nature. I'm very like I'm tied to my self-worth is tied to productivity. It's not a good thing. I'm still working through that. But I do find that I'm really good at like checking things off lists and I can thrive in that space. When it comes to really like imagining the systems and the processes that need to drive things into like having a stronger foundation, that's somewhere that I would say is still kind of a learning space for me. I definitely am getting better and better with each business. But my nature loves to just kind of play in like creating. And so for me, like just all of the kind of, the data and analysis and all of that is newer space and newer territory for me. And it doesn't necessarily come as naturally to me as all the other stuff, the doing that I so love to do. Right. So
Amazing, amazing. So, what is the best part of it? What's the fun part of running a business?
I mean, I feel like there's lots of things and there's lots of rewards to having a business. I think that there's a very small amount of people who have the wherewithal and the determination to even do it. You have to have a level of kind of self drive and a level of accountability for your day-to-day actions that is very difficult to kind of maintain, especially when you're not experiencing rapid growth or experiencing all the returns on the experience, right? So I think that number one, it just feels cool to be able to have achieved that. And that's like a victory in itself. I think on top of it, the level of freedom and independence that I have because of this, like I have 2 young children. And so being able to structure my day in a way that is like allows me to still be present for them at the moments that I want to be present for them is worth its weight in gold to me. And I honestly would never give it up because there's just nothing better than being able to kind of have that active like role in their life and also be able to pursue something that means something to me and gives me a sense of, you know, my own identity apart from just being a mom. And I think like the third thing that really is like the kicker for me and makes me like very emotional is that like it's very cool as a woman to be able to model to my two daughters what it looks like to kind of build something and imagine something and to have them see that from not only the ground up, but to like be, you know, hopefully a source of inspiration for them. My older daughter, who's 8, is already starting to kind of display a lot of these like entrepreneurial energies, I'd say. And so like she's, you know, doing lemonade stands weekly, and she's like, anytime she gets treats like from birthday parties she doesn't like, she's trying to flip them to other people. I mean, she's got like hustler energy to her core, and I think it just excites me because it makes me feel like she's seeing that she's in control of her own destiny in ways, and that she can drive, you know, her ship wherever she chooses, and it's really limitless for her. And I think that is just like the best gift, because you can say things with words all the time, but being able to truly like model something to your children that gives them a sense of empowerment and a sense of strength and makes them feel like the world is their oyster is really just like a huge gift for me.
Beautiful. Oh,
Yeah.
that's really amazing to know that your kid is already, you know,
I know, it's
walking in your
crazy.
path.
Yeah, it blows my mind. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, is it too early? Like should I try to like, and then I see like it's just genuinely, she just enjoys that and thrives in that space, and it lights her up. It fills her up in a similar way that like it has always filled me up. And so it's cool to see for sure.
Amazing, amazing. So you do have a very busy schedule and
Yeah.
totally busy with so many roles to play. Are you
Yeah.
quick at coming up with backup plans if needed?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm always, again, prioritizing everything at all times. And so I think that my job, I mean, my role as a mother is always going to be number one, and nothing is going to really interfere or trump that for me. And that's not going to be everybody's, like, you know, maybe priority like system, but for me, I find that if I ever start to feel like too much of my energy, if I feel like the scales are getting imbalanced, I will readjust them myself manually just to kind of like hit override on whatever work stuff needs to be done and get them balanced again. Because that is the reason I'm doing all of it in the first place. And I think that a lot of times it does require pivoting in your business and pivoting into different plans, because you just have to, and you have to be adaptable, and you have to be able to roll with the flow of what's unfolding. And it's never ever the way you plan it, like ever. So it really requires a level of just adaptability and a little kind of easygoing nature, which I am somewhat type A. And sometimes I can like, you know, I get like fixated on how I think things are going to happen. But as I've gotten older, it's so much easier for me now to just kind of be like, all right, well, like, I guess we're going over this way or whatever it might be. And I don't really feel the pit in my stomach anymore, or the worry that like, how is this going to play out, or any of that kind of stuff. It's like a much deeper sense of trust and like knowing that it's all going to work out exactly as it needs to. And that makes it a lot easier to navigate. So,
Excellent. Yeah, that is very practical approach.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So since you started pretty early as a business person,
Yeah.
could you talk a little bit about failures, setbacks, and also the
Oh,
fear
yeah.
factor?
Yeah.
Because we as adults have that fear
Yeah.
of what's my next step? Is it going to work? Too
Right.
much of hindrance,
Right.
self-made hindrances. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to kind of self-sabotage, especially in the very beginning of any sort of endeavor. I find that a lot of the people I talk to that are starting businesses and they want guidance, I think that there's a lot of fear surrounding kind of the first steps. It's like that moment of like, am I willing to like to put my energy into this? Do I want to take the risk? What happens if it doesn't work? And am I then a failure? Like all these kinds of questions come into play. And I think that part of the gift that I feel because I started so young is that I've tried so many things and done so much stuff that I don't have the same attachment to those steps. And so for me, it's very easy to take the first step because I'm like, well, if it doesn't work, like we'll figure something else out, right? And so there's not that fear that surrounds it. But I know that so many people experience that and go through it. And I always just guide them and say, like, one step a day, you know, if you can. And obviously, like, take your weekends, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be every single day, but it just kind of is a good guidepost for you, because once you get over the initial hill of building something, it's like once you've thought of your name and you've gotten your business license and you've done your paperwork, like you are starting to create meaningful momentum. And at a certain point, your system believes that you're in it, right? And your system will start going like, well, I guess we're doing this. Like, here we go. And so it's like, if you can kind of do enough decisions in a day or like in the days leading, that you can get that momentum to where your system is starting to believe this is real and this is a reality and you can do it. I think the fear starts to dissipate and it starts to feel like there's just possibilities and potential on the other side of it all. And I mean, failures happen all the time. I've had moments that like still like to this day are like cringe moments where I was like, oh my gosh, like how did that? And the funny thing about it is that at the end of the day, I think they were all just giving me guidance towards something else. Like they were all serving a purpose and they were all leading me in different ways towards new things or new expansion. And so what may be looked at to some as failures, like in a nutshell, it really actually they were gifts, you know, and I start to see it that way. And I mean, it's not that I still don't see it and have cringe, right? But I can laugh at it now and I can have appreciation for what it led me to. And it's like the dichotomy can exist, right? You can have both of those feelings. So I don't know. I think that failure is beautiful and I encourage it as much as possible because it means you're taking risks and you're trying things that are outside of your comfort zone. And usually the things outside of your comfort zone are the gifts. Like that's where magic happens. It doesn't happen by you being safe all the time and doing everything within the lines, right? It's not that. It's coloring outside of the lines and being crazy and doing things that are risky. And that's what usually creates magic. So
yeah, it's probably like the universe is leaving you a little breadcrumbs so you can follow, and
100%.
Definitely it leads to something.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like it's so wild because even with this company, it's like I had the idea for it and then I got a sewing machine and I was like, okay, like let's go. And then like it didn't feel right and I could not figure out why it didn't feel right. And then I kind of tabled it for a few months and I was just like, I don't know. This is just not what I'm supposed to do. And then all of a sudden, one morning, I met Slajna, who sews with me now. And I met her. She's like the grandmother of one of my kids' like friends. And we started talking and she's like, oh, like I'm a master seamstress. And like, that's what I love to do. And I was like, do you want to come over and like, we can work on this? And it was just like, it just fell into my lap in a way that like I could not have orchestrated. Like my mind wasn't looking for someone. I wasn't pursuing it. I wasn't doing anything. And like, yet it just came into my system. You know what I mean? And it just like infiltrated into my universe. And it's just like, that's where beauty happens, is like those kinds of synchronicities where it's like, you kind of know what you need, but you're not attached to what it looks like. And then it just falls in your lap and you're like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to do this. And that's literally what happened. And from that point, it's just like there were synchronicities all around everything opening up and it just kept on happening.